In the chaotic aftermath of the First Crusade, the Holy Land was a wound that refused to heal. Roads to Jerusalem were drenched in danger, where bandits and broken soldiers haunted the path of faith. Amid this turmoil, 9 knights, poor nameless men bound by a sacred vow, pledged to protect the pilgrims who still dared to walk that perilous road. They called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. What began as a gesture of devotion soon turned into something far greater. Endorsed by the church, these humble warriors were granted land, wealth, and privilege beyond measure. Their courage in the battlefield became legend, their discipline unmatched. Yet behind their humility grew an unseen power, an order answering not to kings, but to God Himself. Within decades, their network of fortresses and treasuries spanned continents, creating the first true multinational system of banking and communication. Pilgrims entrusted their fortunes to the Templars, and kings borrowed from their coffers. It was as if divine providence favored them, or perhaps something else entirely. For no mortal brotherhood should rise so swiftly, nor command such wealth, without the whisper of something hidden guiding their ascent. The Templars were not merely soldiers, they were architects of a new kind of power, one that transcended crown and creed. Bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, they lived as monks yet fought as conquerors. Within their fortress chapels, silence was law and obedience was sacred. Their ranks moved with the precision of a single will, guided by rituals whispered only within candlelit halls. To the outside world, they were the epitome of Christian devotion, fearless warriors who bled for God. But as their influence expanded, so too did the shadows around them. By the 13th century, their banner, the Red Cross on a white field, carried more weight than the seals of kings. Monarchs owed them money. Popes deferred to their counsel. The Templar network stretched from Jerusalem to Paris, guarded by oaths so binding that no brother dared speak their secrets. Yet, in the taverns and courts of Europe, rumors began to fester. Peasants spoke of midnight gatherings where the knights invoked strange names. Some said they guarded relics, not of Christ, but of something far older, objects of power unearthed beneath Solomon's temple. Their motto, non nobis domine, non nobis, sed nomine tuo de gloriam. Not unto us, O Lord, but to thy name give glory, concealed an irony few understood, for behind their piety lay mysteries that defied the church itself. And as their secrecy deepened, even kings began to wonder whom these warrior monks truly served. When the first Templars arrived in Jerusalem, they were granted quarters upon the very site of Solomon's temple, a ruin layered with centuries of conquest and faith. But beneath the crumbling stones, they saw more than rubble. They saw a mystery. For 9 long years, the knights vanished from the chronicles of the Crusader kingdom, their public deeds replaced by silence. They did not fight, they did not expand, they dug. Tunnels wound deep into the sacred mount where legend said the treasures of Israel's first kings still slept. What they unearthed has never been recorded, but from that silence emerged transformation. When the 9 knights resurfaced, their fortunes shifted as if touched by divine hand. Suddenly, they possessed knowledge and influence beyond comprehension. Pilgrims flocked to their banner, and even the church seemed compelled to legitimize their order. Pope Honorius himself issued them protection so absolute that no ruler could judge them, no priest could question them. It was as if the papacy feared what they now carried. Some later whispered that the knights had found the lost ark, sacred texts of Solomon, or relics that predated all known faiths. Others claimed they uncovered evidence that the very foundations of Christianity rested on older hidden truths. Whatever it was, the Templars never spoke of it. They guarded their secret not with chains, but with silence. And in that silence, a new power was born, one the world would never fully understand. Centuries after the Templars vanished into history's mist, scattered parchments and coded letters began to resurface, fragments of a story too heretical to be told aloud. Among these were accounts from medieval chroniclers who hinted that beneath Solomon's temple, the knights unearthed something not divine, but dangerous. It wasn't gold or jewels that transformed their destiny, but knowledge, relics and scrolls that spoke of an age long before Christianity, long before the prophets themselves. Some described devices of impossible craftsmanship, gears and metals unknown to medieval science. Others told of writings etched with symbols that mirrored Sumerian tablets and Egyptian stelae, as though all ancient civilizations had whispered from the same source. The Templars' rapid ascent, their sudden wealth, their unprecedented privileges, began only after that mysterious excavation. How did an order of poor knights, sworn to poverty, become Europe's greatest power in a single generation? Faith alone cannot explain such alchemy. Perhaps it was not divine favor they received, but forbidden knowledge, something they could not reveal without unraveling the world's most sacred truths. Whatever they found was powerful enough to make popes bow, kings tremble, and chroniclers fall silent. And if their treasure did not belong to God, then to whom did it belong? The question still lingers, echoing through the centuries. What secret could rewrite history, yet remain hidden beneath the very heart of Christendom? For centuries, scholars and seekers have wrestled with the enigma of what the Templars truly discovered beneath the Temple Mount. Some insist it was the Holy Grail itself, not a cup, but a vessel of divine essence, perhaps even a bloodline. Others argue it was the Ark of the Covenant, the lost chest said, to contain the voice of God, capable of toppling armies and scorching the unworthy. Such relics, if real, could have elevated the knights beyond the reach of kings, giving them the authority of heaven itself. But a darker theory has emerged, that what they found was not holy at all, but pre-Christian. Ancient records chronicling a forgotten age when humanity worshipped forces older than any scripture dared name. These scrolls, some claim, described beings that descended from the stars, or gods of light and fire whom early priests tried to erase. The Templars, bound by faith yet confronted by forbidden truth, may have chosen silence over revelation. To reveal it would have meant heresy. To conceal it meant survival. Whatever lay beneath that temple, it was powerful enough to twist faith into fear. If the Grail and the Ark were metaphors for divine contact, perhaps the Templars' treasure was something far worse. A mirror held up to God himself, revealing not salvation, but the shadow behind the light. And that secret, once seen, could never be unseen. Across Europe, the remnants of the Templar order stand like frozen whispers, cathedrals, commanderies, and chapels etched with symbols that defy ordinary faith. Carved into stone lintels and window arches are patterns that seem decorative at first, but when mapped across sites, they align with unsettling precision. The eight-pointed star, the spiral cross, the double triangle, all appear where no medieval mason should have known to place them. Some of these alignments, when overlaid on modern celestial charts, mirror the constellations of Orion and Sirius. stars long associated with resurrection and the afterlife in ancient Egypt. Could this be coincidence or proof that the Templars were encoding an astronomical message centuries ahead of their time? Historians call it sacred geometry. Conspiracy scholars call it proof of preservation, a hidden language passed down from pre-Christian civilizations. Even the floor plans of Templar churches defy logic, oriented not toward Jerusalem but to points in the sky. It's as though their architects sought communion not with heaven, but with the cosmos itself. Were these symbols the remnants of what they found beneath Solomon's temple? Fragments of an ancient science the church would not dare to name? Whatever their meaning, the stones still speak, and their message remains unresolved. By the dawn of the 14th century, King Philip of France, known as Philip the Fair, sat upon a throne gilded in illusion. His crown shone with borrowed gold, every jewel a reminder of his dependence on the very order he secretly despised. The Knights Templar, once his allies in faith, had become his creditors. They financed his wars, guarded his treasury, and even held the royal family's fortune within their impregnable vaults. To the world, Philip was the anointed ruler of Christendom. But behind the palace doors, he was a debtor, ensnared by the pious monks he could neither command nor corrupt. His pride, that fragile crown of ego, began to crack under the weight of his humiliation. Whispers at court mocked the king who bowed to the temple. The Templars' vast network of wealth and secrecy had made them untouchable, operating outside royal law, owing allegiance to no one but God. And in that divine allegiance, Philip saw blasphemy. A monarch who fancied himself chosen by heaven could not abide rivals cloaked in holier power. So he began to plot, not with swords, but with envy. To destroy the Templars, he would not challenge their faith. He would poison it. For what faith cannot be broken by fear? The first accusations emerged not from priests, but from whispers seeded by Philip's own agents. Across Paris, in taverns and courts, stories began to spread like rot. Tales of secret Templar rites, of heresy cloaked in holy vows, of men who spat upon the cross and worshipped false idols. The accusations were too precise, too rehearsed, as if scripted by unseen hands. Each rumor struck at the same wound, that the Templars had turned from God and consorted with the devil himself. Yet there was no proof, no witness of sound mind, only confessions dragged from tortured tongues long after. Philip's motives were plain enough: debt, pride, and the hunger for absolute power, but many historians sense another hand guiding him. The Pope of the time, Clement, a man handpicked by Philip and bound to him in uneasy loyalty, seemed to bend with every royal demand. Some believe Clement feared what the Templars had uncovered in Jerusalem centuries before, and that their silence had grown too dangerous for both church and crown. Thus began the Great Purge, cloaked in the language of faith, but driven by shadows far deeper. The Templars were not merely being punished, they were being erased. A legend that had grown too large for the world was being methodically dismantled, as though someone, somewhere, wished to bury not just the order, but the truth they carried with them. Before dawn broke on October 13th, 1307, the bells of Paris tolled not for prayer, but for betrayal. Under secret orders signed by King Philip IV, royal soldiers fanned out across France in a single synchronized sweep. From castles to commanderies, the Knights Templar, once the most revered brotherhood in Christendom, were seized in their sleep. Old men were dragged through the mud, their sacred seals shattered. their holy banners trampled beneath the hooves of their own horses. The charges were blasphemy, idolatry, heresy, words sharp enough to slice through centuries of honor. By sundown, the name Templar had become synonymous with treason against God. But while history remembers the arrests, it forgets what was lost that same night. The Templar archives in Paris, scrolls, ledgers, coded maps, vanished without a trace. Witnesses claimed that before the raids began, a line of Templar wagons slipped out under the cover of darkness, bound for the coast. What they carried has never been recovered. Some say it was the Order's treasure. Others whisper it was something far more dangerous. The secret unearthed beneath Solomon's temple, spirited away before the crown could claim it. As fires consumed the knights and their brotherhood, a new superstition was born, Friday the 13th, a day cursed by betrayal. Yet the true curse was not the king's deceit, but the mystery that survived his wrath, hidden, waiting, defying time itself. The dungeons beneath Paris echoed with screams muffled by stone. One by one, the captured Templars were dragged before inquisitors, men of God who wielded iron instead of scripture. Shackled to the rack, their faith was tested not by questions of theology, but by agony. The accusations were grotesque: denying Christ, kissing idols, worshiping a mysterious head said to grant them power. Yet the confessions, torn from shattered bodies, never aligned. One swore to demonic rites, another claimed to have seen nothing at all. Each story contradicted the last, and still the inquisitors wrote it all down. Every word treated as gospel, every scream as proof. To the church, this was purification. To the crown, justification. But to those who listened closely, the contradictions themselves told a different story. One of men who refused to speak the truth, not because it was false, but because it was too dangerous to reveal. The Templars had been trained to endure pain, to guard secrets that could shatter kingdoms. So they spoke in riddles, fragments, and lies designed to confuse their tormentors. Whether they were concealing heresy or something greater remains uncertain. But even in their agony, silence became their final act of defiance. Among the many charges leveled against the Templars, one stands apart for its sheer strangeness: the worship of a severed head called Baphomet. To the inquisitors, it was evidence of devilry, the ultimate proof that the knights had turned from God. But the word Baphomet itself is a riddle. Some scholars say it was a corruption of Muhammad, an insult implying that the Templars had embraced the faith of Islam. Others, centuries later, would link the name to something older, a hidden current of wisdom that predates all organized religion. Witnesses described the head differently. Some said it was of silver, others wood, others alive. A few claimed it spoke, whispering prophecies and revealing secrets of the earth and stars in occult texts that surfaced long after the Order's fall. Baphomet was reimagined, not as a demon, but as a symbol of balance, the fusion of opposites, male and female, light and dark, heaven and earth. Could it be that the Templars inherited the concept from the ancient mysteries unearthed beneath Solomon's temple, a cosmic truth misunderstood by their persecutors? If so, their greatest sin was not heresy, but possession of knowledge humanity was not meant to hold. The church saw a devil's head. The Templars may have seen the face of unity, the reflection of creation itself. Whatever its origin, the name Baphomet survived the flames that consumed them, echoing through centuries as both curse and key. On a cold March evening in 1314, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, was led to his death upon an island in the Seine. Years of imprisonment had withered his body, but not his resolve. Before the watching crowds and the flicker of the executioner's torches, he stood unbowed, his white mantle torn, his hands bound, yet his voice unwavering. When offered the chance to repent, he refused. Instead, he proclaimed the innocence of his brothers and summoned heaven itself as witness. Then, as the flames began to climb, de Molay's final words became legend. He called upon God to judge those who had betrayed the order, King Philip I and Pope Clement IV, within the year. The smoke that rose from his pyre carried more than the scent of burning flesh. It carried a curse that history would not forget. Within months, the Pope was dead, stricken by illness. Before the year's end, Philip followed, struck down suddenly, his bloodline soon extinguished. To the faithful, it was divine retribution. To others, the timing was too perfect, too theatrical, as though the Templars had invoked something older than any god the Church dared name. De Molay's death marked the end of an age, but not the end of the order. In that final blaze, the Templars vanished from history, leaving behind only whispers, relics, and a lingering question. Did his curse die with him, or did it awaken something eternal as Philip's men prepared their dawn raids? Another drama unfolded far from Paris, one that would haunt historians for centuries. In the harbor of La Rochelle, the Templar fleet, once the pride of their order, was seen anchored in eerie silence. Dozens of ships laden with goods and guarded by loyal knights waited as if anticipating a storm. Then, on the night of October 12, 1307, mere hours before the king's decree struck, the ships vanished into the black Atlantic, their sails catching the moonlight for the last time. No records of their destination were ever found, no wrecks ever recovered. It was as if the sea itself had swallowed them whole. What did they carry? Some say gold, the unimaginable wealth of the temple, hidden from royal hands. Others whisper of sacred relics and scrolls, spirited away to protect the truth buried beneath Solomon's temple. Chroniclers speak of coded orders sent by Grand Master Jacques de Molay himself, forewarning his brethren of betrayal. If so, the fleet's disappearance was no accident, but a calculated escape, a final act of defiance by a brotherhood determined to outlive its enemies. Whatever they carried, it was valuable enough to vanish forever, and perhaps, somewhere across the seas, it still waits to be found. In the centuries that followed, the vanished Templar fleet became legend, a ghost armada sailing the edges of history. Some chroniclers claimed the ships found safe harbor in Portugal, protected by King Denis, who quietly absorbed their sailors into the newly founded Order of Christ. Others pointed north to the mist-veiled shores of Scotland, where exiled knights supposedly aided Robert the Bruce in his fight for independence. In return, they were given sanctuary and perhaps something more, a new beginning. But there are wilder tales still. Across the Atlantic, in the ancient stones of Nova Scotia and the carvings of New England, researchers have found crosses and symbols strikingly similar to those of the Templars, marks predating Columbus by centuries. Could they have crossed the ocean carrying their knowledge to the New World? Maps from the period, impossibly accurate for their time, hint that someone had charted lands long before official discovery. If true, the Templars may have done more than survive. They may have seeded a legacy that would one day reshape the world's understanding of history itself. Perhaps their ships did not vanish at all. They simply sailed beyond the horizon of belief into a chapter humanity was never meant to read. Though their banners burned, the Templar spirit never died. Across Europe, whispers tell of knights who traded armor for aprons, blending into the fabric of new societies. In stonemason guilds, mysterious symbols began to appear: twin pillars, the blazing star, the all seeing eye. These emblems bore uncanny resemblance to Templar insignia, suggesting that the Brotherhood's secrets survived in a new form. Historians now suspect that remnants of the order merged with early guilds of builders and scholars, forming the foundations of what would later become Freemasonry. Through ritual, architecture, and allegory, they preserved the knowledge that once defined the temple, hidden not in cathedrals, but in plain sight. The bloodlines of knights, bankers, and scholars intertwined, guarding their inheritance through silence. Was this the rebirth of the order, a transformation from swords to symbols, from fortress to philosophy? If so, the Templars did not fall at all. They merely changed their name, retreating from history's gaze while continuing their true work, the protection of an ancient truth that, even now, refuses to die. Among the ruins of former Templar strongholds, in France, Cyprus, and even the Holy Land, archaeologists have uncovered fragments of parchment written in languages that resist easy translation. These fragile remains, scorched and water-stained, bear the marks of secrecy. Coded symbols, obscure Greek and Gnostic phrases long condemned by the Yassi Church. Some scholars claim they are copies of early Christian texts, gospels that never made it into the Bible. But within their cryptic verses lies something even more dangerous: references to a bloodline descending directly from Jesus of Nazareth, a living grail carried through generations in silence. If such writings were authentic, they would have shattered the theological foundations of medieval Christendom. The divinity of Christ, the authority of Rome, all would crumble under the weight of such revelation. Could this be the real reason the Vatican turned against the Templars? Not heresy, but truth. A truth that threatened to expose the fragile architecture of power. Whether these scrolls were genuine or forged to mislead, their existence alone was intolerable. And when the Templars fell, so too did these documents vanish, either destroyed by fire or absorbed into the vaults of the church. Only fragments remain, whispering a question too perilous to answer. What if the blood of God still flows in human veins? In the dim light of ancient Templar chapels, amid frescoes of angels and saints, lie symbols that defy Christian doctrine. Carved into stone and painted beneath layers of plaster are serpents coiled around suns, winged discs flanked by stars, and geometric alignments that mirror the constellations known to ancient Sumeria and Egypt. To medieval eyes, these would have been meaningless, yet to the Templars they were sacred. These motifs hint at a cosmology far older than Christianity, perhaps even older than written history. Some historians believe the Knights discovered remnants of a forgotten faith beneath the Temple Mount, a system of belief that spoke of divine knowledge hidden within humanity itself. In this creed, salvation was not granted from above, but awakened from within. It was a heresy so profound that to utter it was death. If the Templars had indeed uncovered these teachings, they were forced to cloak them in Christian imagery, encoding them in architecture and ritual for those wise enough to see. What if the Knights, in their long silence beneath Jerusalem, rediscovered a prehistoric understanding of God, one that united heaven, earth, and man as reflections of a single cosmic order? To the Church, that would be blasphemy. To the Templars, it may have been revelation, Deep within the Vatican's secret archives, beyond shelves of papal decrees and faded scrolls, lie documents still sealed under the highest classification, files reportedly connected to the trial of the Knights Templar. A handful of scholars who've glimpsed their summaries speak of disturbing consistencies between the Templar confessions and certain early heretical texts, long suppressed by Rome. What these consistencies are has never been publicly revealed. Why, after 7 centuries, does the Church still guard these materials? Perhaps they contain records of what the Knights found beneath Jerusalem, or evidence that the order's downfall was not divine justice, but deliberate silencing. Whatever the truth, the Vatican remains steadfast in its secrecy. And as long as those doors stay locked, the question lingers like incense in an empty chapel. Did the Church destroy the Templars to protect the faith, or to protect itself? Across Europe, the Templar legacy stands not in words, but in stone. Their cathedrals, from Chartres to Tomar, were built with mathematical precision that defies the tools of their age. Every arch, every column, every shaft of light follows ratios so exact that modern architects still struggle to replicate them. Beneath their apparent devotion lies a code, sacred geometry, the belief that numbers and shapes mirror divine creation. Circles within triangles, octagons between squares, patterns that repeat across Templar structures as if echoing a celestial blueprint. Some researchers claim these designs align with Earth's natural energy lines, channels of geomagnetic force known to ancient builders. Others whisper of acoustic properties hidden in their halls, vibrations that amplify chants to frequencies said to heal the spirit. Could the Templars have possessed knowledge handed down from civilizations far older than Christendom? Their builders worked not like masons, but like mathematicians of the cosmos, embedding harmony into stone. To the faithful, these were houses of God. To the initiated, they were maps, architectural prayers written in geometry. The question endures: how did a brotherhood of medieval warriors gain mastery over secrets that even modern science barely comprehends? When researchers began mapping Templar commanderies, cathedrals, and fortresses, a startling pattern emerged. The locations were not random, they formed precise geometric alignments stretching across Europe. Triangles, pentagrams, and perfect circles connected distant sites, hundreds of miles apart. When plotted on modern maps, the pattern resembled not a human plan, but a design that mirrored constellations above. Could it be that the Templars built Europe itself into a living diagram of the heavens? Some theorists suggest that these alignments marked more than geography. They encoded ancient knowledge of the Earth's energy grid. Many Templar churches stand upon older pagan sites, once dedicated to the sun and stars. It was as though the Knights inherited a sacred map and continued a project begun millennia before their time. If the pattern was intentional, then the order was working towards something far greater than faith or fortune. Their buildings became beacons, harmonizing with celestial and terrestrial rhythms. Perhaps they sought to turn Europe into a vast instrument, an earthly reflection of divine order. Whether mystical, mathematical, or both, the pattern remains undeniable. The question is not whether the Templars knew, but how much they knew. Modern engineers examining Templar structures find anomalies they cannot explain. Stones fused without visible mortar, vaults balanced with millimeter precision, stained glass that manipulates light as if designed by physicists. How could medieval builders achieve such perfection without modern tools? Some suggest lost techniques, others whisper of something stranger: guidance. If the Templars inherited ancient knowledge from Jerusalem, perhaps they also inherited the means to shape the world with it. The symmetry of their temples mirrors not just faith, but formula, a science of the divine. Were they preserving a fragment of forgotten technology or reawakening something buried in the past? Whatever their source, their mastery feels out of time, a knowledge that should not exist in the Middle Ages. Perhaps that was their greatest heresy, not what they believed, but what they understood. When Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Knights Templar in 1312, the Church believed it had extinguished a dangerous flame. Yet history has a way of concealing what cannot be destroyed. In the years that followed, the symbols of the order began to reappear, not in the grand halls of cathedrals, but in the quiet stonework of Scotland's chapels and castles. The red cross, the double-barred sword, the eight-pointed star, all resurfaced like echoes of a buried language. Scotland, untamed by papal authority and sympathetic to the exiled, became a haven for fugitive Templars. Some fought alongside Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn. Others vanished into the mist, leaving behind only carvings and coded marks. From those ashes, whispers of rebirth began. Across Europe, secret brotherhoods emerged, societies devoted to knowledge, architecture, and enlightenment. Their members spoke of ancient truths veiled in allegory, of a divine architecture connecting man to God. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The Templar ideals of discipline, secrecy, and sacred geometry lived on, just beneath the surface of a changing world. Perhaps the Templars never truly fell. They simply shed their name, waiting for an age when faith could no longer burn them for what they knew. By the 17th century, a new brotherhood had taken root across Europe: Freemasonry. Outwardly a guild of builders and philosophers, it carried within its rituals a shadow older than its name. Its ceremonies spoke of a sacred order destroyed by tyranny, of oaths sworn to truth above kings and churches alike. In the archives of early Scottish lodges, historians have found Templar phrases, non nobis domine, non nobis, and initiation vows nearly identical to those once spoken by knights in white mantles. Even the tools of the mason, the compass, square, and trowel, echo the symbols once carved into Templar cathedrals. Coincidence? Perhaps. Yet the deeper one delves, the more the parallels harden into pattern. Freemasonry's Scottish Rite, with its emphasis on moral virtue, sacred geometry, and hidden wisdom, seems less a new creation than is a continuation. Some claim the surviving Templars carried their knowledge north after the fall, embedding it in the stonemasons' guilds that sheltered them. Over time, the sword became a chisel, the crusader a craftsman, but the purpose endured. Beneath the language of architecture lay the same vow to guard the truth that once brought the order to ruin. As Europe emerged from its medieval slumber, Templar symbols began to flicker once more, not in monasteries, but in movements that reshaped nations. The Renaissance's obsession with proportion and light echoed their sacred geometry. The Enlightenment's defiance of tyranny mirrored their ancient rebellion. And in the chaos of revolution from France to America, the cross-pate and Masonic eye appeared again, carved into monuments, woven into flags, hidden in plain sight. Were these coincidences of design or signs of an invisible legacy guiding humanity's course? Some historians dismiss it as myth. Others suspect that the ideals once guarded by the temple, freedom of thought, unity of knowledge, the sanctity of truth, survived through those who swore the hidden oath. Perhaps the Templars' greatest victory was not on the battlefield, but in the shaping of a world that would finally understand them. For centuries, Poets and priests alike have pursued the Holy Grail, the chalice said to have caught the blood of Christ. Yet modern researchers argue that the Grail was never a cup at all, but a code, a metaphor for something living. Hidden within the legends lies the idea of a sang real, the royal blood, later corrupted into sang grail. What if the Grail was not a relic, but a bloodline? A lineage descending directly from Jesus of Nazareth and Mary Magdalene, preserved in secrecy through the centuries. The Knights Templar, with their access to ancient texts and forbidden gospels, may have discovered this truth beneath Solomon's temple. It would explain their sudden power, their protection by certain royal families, and the church's terror at their influence. For if Christ's blood still flowed through mortal veins, the entire hierarchy of divine authority would collapse. No pope, no priest could claim mediation between God and man if God's descendants walked the earth in silence. Did the Templars see themselves as guardians of this living grail, protectors not of an object, but of a sacred lineage? If so, their secrecy was not pride, but necessity. The revelation of such truth could destroy both kingdoms and creeds in a single breath. Stranger still are the threads that bind Europe's noble houses to the vanished Templar order. Lineages once intertwined with the knights' estates and alliances reappear centuries later, bearing titles and lands curiously spared from royal confiscation. The House of Lorraine, the Stuarts of Scotland, and even certain French dynasties trace faint bloodlines to Templar patrons or benefactors, connections too, consistent to dismiss as coincidence. Whispers in historical archives suggest that after the order's fall, select families sheltered its survivors and inherited fragments of its secret. Over time, those families ascended, shaping the destinies of nations, while quietly preserving an inheritance the church dared not acknowledge. Their emblems still echo Templar iconography: double crosses, red seals, and roses entwined with swords. Could it be that the Templars' true treasure was human, a lineage carrying divine or ancient knowledge that ensured their influence never died? Royal marriages, papal decrees, even wars of succession may have been moves in a greater game, one designed to conceal a bloodline that could rewrite the story of creation itself. If the Templars were indeed protectors of this sacred family, then their legacy was not extinguished by fire, it simply changed thrones. In the end, perhaps the Church's greatest fear was not blasphemy, but proof. If the Templars had uncovered evidence that divinity once walked among mortals, and that its lineage endured, then every doctrine of salvation would stand exposed. Faith would become fact, and authority would crumble beneath it. To admit such truth would mean rewriting the foundation of Christianity itself. So the story was buried, the knights condemned, their records sealed, their relics scattered. Yet fragments of their secret endure in whispers and symbols, in royal bloodlines and hidden archives. If the Grail was truly flesh and blood, then humanity has spent 2 millennia praying to what still lives among it, and perhaps that is the Templars' final heresy, that they did not lose faith in God, but found him dwelling within mankind itself. Beneath the marble corridors of the Vatican lies a labyrinth few have ever seen, a world of sealed vaults and ancient archives guarded by silence and faith. Among the rumors whispered by historians and heretics alike is one that refuses to die: the existence of a hidden chamber once belonging to the Knights Templar, buried deep beneath Rome itself. According to this legend, The vault contains relics taken from Jerusalem after the First Crusade, objects unearthed from beneath Solomon's temple and spirited away as the order crumbled. Scrolls, maps, devices, and perhaps the true account of what the Templars discovered in the Holy Land. Some claim the vault was sealed by papal decree after the suppression of the order, its existence erased from all records. Others suggest that its contents were not destroyed but studied, their knowledge absorbed into the Church's hidden councils. A handful of researchers have even traced architectural anomalies beneath St. Peter's Basilica, corridors aligning perfectly with Templar geometries found in Paris and Jerusalem. If the vault exists, it could hold the final proof of the Templar secret, the key to a mystery that has shaped faith, power, and history itself. But perhaps that is precisely why it remains sealed. Some doors, once open, can never be closed again. From scholars to explorers, those who have dared to dig too deeply into the Templar mystery share a peculiar fate. Sudden deaths, vanished expeditions, destroyed archives, a trail of misfortune that seems to follow those who get too close. In 1818, an antiquarian researching Templar relics in Paris was found lifeless beside his notes, his papers inexplicably burned. In 1942, a German archaeologist claimed to have located a Templar vault beneath Jerusalem. He disappeared days later, his findings erased from all records. Even in recent decades, investigators have spoken of black-suited officials, anonymous threats, and inexplicable accidents. Coincidence, perhaps. Yet history has long feared the pattern. From Jacques de Molay's dying curse to the mysterious fates of his accusers, the shadow of retribution lingers. Some call it divine justice. Others whisper that it is something far older, a vow bound not by faith, but by energy, oath, or law of the unseen world. Maybe the curse is not punishment, but protection, a safeguard woven into the secret itself. For if the Templars uncovered something humanity was never meant to possess, then perhaps it still defends itself, striking down those who would drag it back into the light. When the flames consumed the last Templars, history recorded an ending. But endings are often disguises, a curtain drawn over truths too dangerous for their time. What if their destruction was not meant to silence heresy, but to contain revelation, a controlled burn to seal away something the world was never meant to remember? Perhaps the Templars' greatest secret was not what they found, but why they hid it. If their discovery beneath Solomon's temple revealed the origins of faith itself, or the blueprint of the divine, then the stakes transcended kingdoms and creeds. Humanity, unready for such truth, was spared or denied, and so the order burned, its knowledge scattered into symbols, whispers, and bloodlines. Yet the story refuses to die, because somewhere beneath the stones of Rome or in the hidden veins of the world, their secret still breathes, waiting for the one who dares to uncover what was never meant to be known.